I'm here because Mrs. Maines isn't, and I have a couple announcements before the meeting begins this evening. As you will note from looking at your agenda, there are three matters at which we intend to vote, or about which we intend to vote this evening. One is a student disciplinary matter, and the other two are personnel matters. And our solicitor has informed us that if there is any public comment on those matters only, we can have it before we begin our meeting. So is there any public comment on any of the three items that we'll be considering to vote on this evening? Seeing no one, I would like to tell the board that our plan is to move property and supply on the agenda ahead of finance. And if you would make that correction on your agenda accordingly. Thank you all very much. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Elder.
Here.
Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Mrs. Cozart.
Here.
Dr. Laughlin.
Here.
Dr. Math-A. Mr. Meeker.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Dr. Zorch. Mrs. Maines.
Oh, just in case anybody, I should announce that we had an executive session before this meeting to discuss a matter of student discipline and matters of personnel. Okay, Mr. Nichols?
I recommend that you move on resolution number 2012-2013, number 140, student disciplinary matter 01 of 2012-2013 school year.
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion from board members? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cozart.
Yes.
Dr. Laughlin. Yes. Mr. Meeker.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Elder.
Yes. The motion passes unanimously. Is there any other?
I'm sorry, no further.
There will be two items on the agenda next week about tax assessments and the Bell lease under the solicitor's report. Legislative report, Dr. Laughlin? No report. Education and planning, I'll take Mrs. Maine's portfolio. Students, are you ready to report? We have a written report that the students have given us.
Good evening. I'm going to start on the first bullet, the Sandy Hook Elementary School fundraiser. And the junior high actually brought this to the senior high's attention. They had designed a t-shirt to sell, and a portion of the proceeds of these t-shirts went to the victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School. And they were sold for $10 in lunches from the junior high and the senior high. And in the senior high alone, it brought in so much money, so we would like to commend the junior high for organizing that fundraiser. And then jumping down to bullet number 2, prom planning. The class officers have already started planning for prom this year, and a theme has already been discussed and agreed upon, and it's called Unmask the Night. And being that we got a jump start on prom, we actually are in the process of organizing a parent committee as well as a student committee so that people in our grade feel that they have more of a input in prom. So we're really excited to continue planning, and we have bigger and better ideas in mind. So we're really excited for prom 2013.
Jumping down to Roman numeral number 5, the Kennemetal Young Engineers Program. Last week, the Greater Latrobe Senior High School graduated the 3rd semester of the Kennemetal Young Engineers Program, which I was fortunate to be a part of. Throughout the semester, we learned about careers in engineering and manufacturing from the employees over at Kennemetal, which we went to 2 days a week. We were divided up into groups, and we worked on designing a portable chair that we had to not only design and figure out the specs and dimensions for, but had to come up with a market analysis, financial analysis, and sales projections for our miniature company. We also learned teamwork and career development through mock interviews, resume workshops, and group exercises that taught us the most efficient way to go about doing things. Kennemetal really has an emphasis on the next generation of engineers, and so not only have they started up a new Young Engineers program in Solon, Ohio at that facility, but they will be continuing this one here in Latrobe. And the next group of Young Engineers will begin at the beginning of the third quarter with going over to Kennemetal to start the 4th semester of the program. And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Glenn. Dr. Tepper, do you have anything to add to the enrollment report?
No, the enrollment report is attached. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Prano, educational programs?
There are 3 areas underneath my report this evening. The first one involves a report by 2 teachers from Bagwell Elementary School, 6th grade teachers, Mrs. Sarah Fetterman and Mrs. Heather Resch. Tonight they're going to be speaking about math teaching and learning. And I must say that they're 2 not only the finest professionals I know, but also 2 of the finest people I know. So that's all why they're here tonight. So we're here to talk about math practices and those best practices that really have an impact upon student learning and student achievement. Yes.
I don't know that they really need an introduction. What Dr. Prano said was absolutely true. At our board retreat, we discussed a lot of PSSA data from the 3 elementary schools, and one of the highlights of the presentation from Bagley Elementary was the success that Sarah and Heather had in our 6th grade math, with our 6th grade math group last year. There were 96% of their students who were proficient or advanced on the PSSA test. And while you'll see that their performance over the last several years has been high, I felt that their performance last year with their group was exceptional in the sense that they were dealing with a group that had a high need. So I went to them and asked if they would come and present to you, like Danny said, the things that they felt make the difference every year, but the things that they felt really made the difference last year with the group of students that they have. So I'm very proud to introduce Heather Resch and Sarah Fetter.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to give us the chance to come and speak about math. We both love math. It's probably one of our passions in life, and fortunately we have found each other to work together in order to actually do math with a lot of students that we teach. So this is just some of the things that we have found that has helped us to be successful throughout the years working together.
So we wanted to start, just make sure I'm going the correct one. There we go. All right. We wanted to start showing some data. Now, if you notice the green line, let me see if there, yeah. The green line is Heather and our scores working together the past 6 years. Now, you'll notice there are actually 7 scores up there. The first one is the year before we started. So our first year we were at a 93%. This is the percentage of students that were proficient on the PSSA test. So it started at 93, which happened to be Blair's year, when 96, 98, 96, 92, and then last year's score of 96%, which last year we were extremely proud of that score. We worked really hard. The class that we had last year definitely pushed us to be better teachers.
And the second piece of data that we had is we just wanted to take a look at that cohort, that particular class, our current 7th grade class, and how they performed on the PSSAs from 3rd grade leading up into 6th grade. And like Sarah said, this class, it was probably one of our favorite classes. It made us work extremely hard together as teachers. We had to be creative just because the needs were a level that we hadn't had before. We had a decent amount of students that had IEPs. There were around average about 15 students, not including those kids who were really extremely close, like the bubble students that we had to have a lot of support for them too. And then on the opposite hand, we had those kids that really needed to be enriched. So together we had to come up with a lot of different ways to try to reach all of those kids. So we were extremely proud of the hard work that they did, and we were able to achieve a 96%. So.
We really feel that the foundation of our success over the past 6 years together is our planning. We were really fortunate to be hired together at the same grade level. I mean, we often say, like, days go by and we're like, I don't know what I'd do if you weren't there. We do a lot of planning together. Basically, everything we do is together. We plan before school. We're usually both there by 8 o'clock in the morning. We plan after school usually. We plan during the day. We eat our lunch together. We talk. We plan during our planning time. So some days it can be 2 hours a day where we're planning together. And during that time, we create lesson plans for the upcoming week. We talk about how we're going to group students throughout our math class and another math period that we have throughout the day that we're going to get to. We also split up the workload for the week. It's so much easier to split things up between 2 people than to do something on your own. So we do that, and obviously a lot of the workload is done, you know, during the weeknights at home and on the weekends, which unfortunately our husbands aren't really happy about, but it happens. We have to do things outside of school as well.
So just to sort of give you an idea of what our day typically looks like, we are both math and science teachers within the 6th grade classes. We have 2 different math core instruction time periods. We have a 9:30 to 10:45 slot, as well as a 2:30 to 3:45 time slot, where we teach 2 different sections of math. Typically, when we introduce a new concept, what we have found is, especially with the new Go Math series, because it's definitely a lot of problem solving, there's a lot of exploration and discovery. We found that the first day when we introduce it, it typically takes between 45 to 60 minutes, and sometimes longer, just depending on what the concept is. And that's where, as a whole group, we sort of discover things together, talk about vocabulary, and have really good math talk discussions. After that, any remaining time, we pull those kids who seem to be struggling a little bit within the general group discussion back into a small group while the other students work more independently. Second day, we still do whole group, but it's typically a little bit smaller amount of time, just because by that point we would have introduced it. We're going to spend the rest of that time period in small group. We like to work with those kids extensively for about 40 minutes, where it's just one-on-one or small group, like maybe 5 students, kind of in-your-face instruction, making sure that you're understanding that concept that we introduced to you yesterday. The hope is that after all of that there'd still be some time left, because we want, you know, of course, math to be fun, to have hands-on activities as well as games to reinforce what it is that we presented the day before, as well as in the small group instruction. Then after that, we are very blessed to have a math extension time, which is at 12:05 to 12:45 time that Sarah's going to introduce. But that is a time period that's very sacred to us, and I really believe with everything in me that is a period that really helps those kids that are struggling some of the concepts of math, because we are working in such a small group with them. So a little bit more about math extension.
So our math extension time, as Heather said, it's 40 minutes right before the students go to lunch. We have math extension every single day, but the students only have it every other day, because we teach 2 different classes. So if I had my homeroom this morning for math extension, I would have my teammates' homeroom tomorrow for math extension, and I won't get my kids again until Thursday for math extension. So they rotate every other day. Basically, what our rooms look like during math extension is we have several things going on. We work intensively with a small group we have these tables that basically look like a kidney bean. We sit with them at the kidney table and we work on whatever concept it is that they need reinforced on. Then we have kind of the students who got the concept, but we feel like maybe they need just a little bit more practice with it. We have them working independently, and then we have an enrichment group who's doing something totally different. They're usually taking the concept that we work on in class and just extending it, taking it even farther. So we have students working independently, we have students working with us, and then we also have parent volunteers that come in that Heather's going to talk about here in the next slide. Oh no, I'm sorry, we're going to get to parent volunteers after that.
That's okay. So how we create our groups, because we do like to have mostly small group interaction during this time period. We use a lot of different data in order to help us create these groups. We have found that weekly Friday quizzes, they're a small amount based on what we've covered throughout the week, but enough information to let us know if they've gotten what we've covered. So our weekly quizzes, we do our unit chapter test, of course, benchmarks that we've had throughout the year. We've also mentioned multiplication time tests. I would say maybe 3 years ago, we had a group of students come in, and a lot of them did not know their basic computational multiplication time facts. So what we did is we just did sort of a whole group time test just to see what were the specific multiplication facts that they didn't know, and then we had multiplication groups based off of that. Parents coming in to help them with flashcards, different websites on computers. That has helped out a lot, just because, especially when you get to 6th grade math, you need those facts, of course, in order to be able to do the algebra and the fractions and things like that. And then also daily class observations with our lessons that we do. based off of that, we will form something called flexible level groups. Level in the sense based on their ability, but flexible in the sense that they're not stationed within that group. So if by chance we have a group that's working with me and the student is really progressing, then they're not bound to be within that group with me. They can move out and move in that other group that's working with a partner or working more independently. Or opposite, if we find a student that's out there that needs some more support, they can come and work with us. So they're definitely flexible in that sense. And then also there's, as far as what they're working on, they work on resource books that are level to their ability. Sometimes the group that's with us, it's just us kind of using whiteboards, practicing specific skills. Other times they're working out of a resource book based on something that they're in need of trying to understand. So again, flexible and very helpful to have a small group interaction with us.
Okay. Now we have found parent volunteers to be a wonderful support. We've been using them since the first year we started teaching. This year, County Berlin came up with pause volunteers, which is parents are welcome in our schools, is what it stands for. So she actually she has 2 parent volunteers that come into our classrooms. They come in Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they pull a small group of kids. It's usually 4 to 5 students, and they work on whatever it might be that the students need that day. Sometimes it's multiplication packs, sometimes it's computational problems, sometimes it's problem solving. It varies from day to day. And then also during the spring, we ask for parent volunteers to come in and work with a small group of students just in preparation for the PSSAs. We use the coach books, which look like this, and they have about 30 lessons in it. They go through everything that we worked on in 6th grade. So the students use the book, they take a small group, they work for about 35 to 40 minutes on a lesson or 2 with them. We provide them with an answer key and all the materials that they would need. And it's just extra support that we found to be so beneficial. It's just great to have another person to come into the room to be able to help.
And we put this slide up here just one last time, and the only reason we did this is because the last 2 slides we've been talking about math extension, and there was 1 year that we didn't have math extension. And you might notice it was the 1 year that we went down to 92. And what we found, like I said, that was the 1 year we just need to kind of rearrange the schedule a little bit. We actually started teaching social studies, and which was interesting. Very interesting. I think
Neither one of us are history buffs
at all. So anyways, we found, like, unfortunately Mike was really great. We went to him knowing that class that was coming, and then last year we had a nice meeting with him, and really we just said, we really think this time's going to be beneficial, especially for this group. And he very much willingly said, okay, let's do it. And fortunately, we were able to get our scores out of having that extra time period.
That's their one last I told you.
He said that we could say that too. We just didn't throw him under the bus, so he could say it.
Something else that we have found to play a huge part in our success that we think in math is the tutoring. So we have the district-wide Tuesday and Thursday tutoring. We start at 8:40 until 9:05, so it's about 25 minutes with the students. And on average, we both have between 6 and 8 students each day. And again, it kind of varies what we work on from day to day. We base it off of who's there, the concepts we worked on the day before, if they were struggling with homework, things like that. And we also have a Wednesday morning tutoring that we do on days that, obviously sometimes Wednesday mornings we have faculty meetings and other things like that going on. But Mike was gracious enough to give us the okay to have tutoring also on Wednesday mornings for those students that are a little bit higher need that enrichment. We didn't want to take away from our Tuesday and Thursday morning tutoring because we feel like it's so beneficial. So that's why we have an enrichment class on Wednesday mornings. Now normally, once PSSAs have passed, we normally move our enrichment to a Thursday morning then. But until then, we always keep basically tutoring Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings.
And one thing that we've done throughout the years is create something that's called a challenge packet, and this has really come in handy, especially with the New Growth Math series, since they are heavily emphasizing problem solving. This whole packet is just 25 challenging word problems. Challenging in the sense that it depends on the level of student that you have. So we have 5 different levels of challenge packets, challenging for each and every one, no matter what level it is that they're on, emphasizing logic, puzzles, problem solving, things like that. And the biggest thing, and why we put this slide on here, is I think our students know and understand that there's just no downtime. Like in math class, there's no downtime. There's always something to do. If you get done early in a small group, they've been working on a challenge packet, which is problem solving based. You can do a challenge 24 game. The emphasis is that there's always something to do. So that's the reason that we put this up there. And the other reason is, especially with the 5 levels, there is an expectation, and I think that Sarah and I both believe in this, that an expectation for all students. Every single student no matter what level they're on, can be a better math student. And that better looks different for each and every one of them, but they can be better. So, and I think that's something that we emphasize through this, and just making sure to let them know that they can love math and do better at it each and every year. Go Math. Also, we must have been this up, right, since we have the new math series. You know, we have been using Go Math now for the first little bit of the school year, and we really do enjoy it. We find that the students are pushed big time. The students are pushed to really understand problems and problem solving. They have to use vocabulary. They have to use meaningful math. I love the math talk boxes that are within the program because they ask those questions that we would ask that make the students really have a deeper understanding of math. It's not a yes or no math question, it's a why is it like this? Would it always work if you did it this way? Good, meaningful math talk. And you know what's interesting? Kids are actually talking math. You can give them something and go around to the different tables and they're talking math, which has been something that we've struggled with in the past and trying to get them to do. So a lot of good stuff happening there. Multiple strategies, so if something doesn't work this one way, they have 3 other ways that they can try to make it work and find one that works best for them. So the Go Math is really, it's pushed us quite a bit. We've tried to really develop some of the skills that they're trying to get us to do. And the kids are getting used to it. They're getting used to the intensity of it and the rigor of it. So lots of very good things going on with the Go Math as well.
And as Heather had mentioned, there are multiple strategies for every concept, and that's, I think, really why we enjoy Go Math, is because it's not just one way to do something. It shows them several different ways to do it, and then they pick whichever strategy works best for them. And we wanted to show you an example, actually, of a dividing fraction. Jessica, are you going to yeah. It should just be, right, yes. So in I guess a traditional classroom, dividing fractions would probably be taught one standard way, and it would probably be using the reciprocal, which is flipping the divisor, and changing it into a multiplication problem. Now, Go Math actually solves it 4 different ways. The first way, and it's actually a previous lesson, I think it's lesson 2.6 or 2.5, they actually show by using fraction strips. So the students model everything, and it is so incredibly difficult for our students to do. It's just a new way of thinking for them. So they start there, and then they go into this lesson, which is lesson 2.7. So the first way they show them is by using the number line right here. So they're solving the problem 2/3 divided by 1/6. So using the number line. Then they go down to another way. Thank you so much, Jessica. Which is using a common denominator. So there's their second strategy. And then on the following page, it's right at the bottom, that blue area. Thank you so much. They show them, finally, the reciprocal. But again, they don't just give it to them, they make them look for a pattern within the table and kind of decide, okay, so what's going on, where are these numbers coming from, what is the reciprocal, and kind of work through it. So, I mean, just with that one concept of dividing fractions, there's 4 different ways to solve it. And then throughout the examples in the book, Go Math has them solve it strictly using a number line, and then strictly using a common denominator. So they get more practice with that specific concept, or with that strategy, and then from there on out, they're kind of able to choose whichever strategy works best for them, and whatever they're most comfortable with. So we really, really like that aspect of Go Math. Thank you so much.
And so one of the last things, because we talked a lot about rigor, about our high expectations, about really working intensely with kids, but math's fun too, and we want them to be able to enjoy it. And so we have found that math games and hands-on activities are equally as important. Games in a sense that they're not just sort of fluff games where they can just sort of practice a remote skill, like higher level thinking games that can be differentiated, that make them use multiple concepts and also lots of math vocabulary. Really good level of math games we have found is very successful. And just also activities. After we're done doing a particular concept, we try to do something that's fun and hands-on that they'll remember, but they're still practicing the specific concept that we're teaching. And on the next couple slides, we won't talk a ton about them because I know your time is precious, but we've just given a couple examples of some of the games and activities that we've done. We do fraction Play-Doh where they are having to solve multiple fraction problems that lead them to the answers so that they can create Play-Doh. Then they have a series of questions afterwards that are fraction-based, measurement-based, a lot of different concepts with one thing. So fraction Play-Doh Play-Doh we've done. PEMDAS Trail Mix, they make a trail mix based on order of operations problems. Yes, lots of fun. And they love to do it too, for sure. So we've done that. Everyday math games, number puzzles, the one on the right-hand side, you'll see that they're trying to come up with the target number, but they have to know great keywords like even and prime and multiple and factor. In between game casting, fraction percents, and how they're related to one another. But again, it's a level. These games are leveled. There's like 2 different levels that you can do with that bottom game. So like for those kids that need a challenge, they can do things with improper fractions. They can do things with higher percentages. Lots of good things with that. We do a St. Jude's Math-A-Thon that's just to keep reinforcing that you can help people at the same time doing math at the same time, and you're practicing skills that we do in the 6th grade curriculum. Halloween math, same idea, given a bag of candy, doing lots of different things with measurement, number systems like prime and composite numbers, and having to have fun building their names at the end. Pi Day activities that we've done to celebrate Pi Day. Math board games, which is our last thing that we do throughout the school year, where they have to make all kinds of different cards and game boards that review every single thing that we did throughout the entire year. And that is it. And the last one we just ended with, and we certainly won't read it for you. These are just some of the things that we thought that has helped us to make us successful. I will tell you each and every year that we always say that we learn something new, and definitely something that we have to strive for. There's a lot we still have to learn, and the Go Math series is making us do it.
Right. Every year pushes us even farther.
Yeah, so we're just very blessed to work together, work with a great staff. Our school is very blessed in the sense that it's a huge team effort. The grades before us, they helped us a ton in order to get our scores to be where they are, so very thankful. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
First of all, where were you when I was in 6th grade? But I'll tell you what math class was like for me. And I hate to say this against all the football guys here, but my math teacher in 6th grade was the assistant football coach. And the way he taught math was he sat at his desk with the book open. If you had a question, the football team got to come up first, and everybody else got to the end of the line. So 30 kids in the class, by the time the girls got to him, we didn't have any time. That was literally how he taught every day. He never actually did a problem on the board. He never did anything. That was my 6th grade math. And I have to really applaud the time that you're putting in this kids before school.
Thank you.
Because that's above and beyond. We've had some, I've heard of teachers in other districts who really struggle with that and fight, the concept of giving a little bit more than is required in their contract. And so we really, really appreciate what you're doing. And obviously the kids are really benefiting.
Thank you. Great job.
They are their harshest critics. They make or accept no excuses. I'm glad to have them on the staff. I will tell you that tonight I invited them to Pizza Hut with my family for dinner, and they looked at me and said, "Thanks, but no thanks. This is precious time for us. We brought our dinners. We're going to work together before we go to the board meeting." So, Sarah lives in Pittsburgh and commutes in every day, and she's there early and she stays late. So they took advantage of the time that we had tonight. So I'm going to bring them back next week. They're going to present again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job, guys.
Back to the agenda, I call the board's attention to the curriculum meeting, which was supposed to be today, but wasn't, was canceled. You're not going to do it till next month?
We will schedule for next month.
And on the agenda next week will be an out-of-state student field trip to the Holocaust Museum in DC on February 21st. The cost is $25 per student plus the cost of a substitute.
And if I can add, this was missing on the October, when we approved our state trips, so I just wanted to make it clear as well.
Okay.
So we have approximately 45 students who will be going. Now we'll move to property and supply. Mrs. Cozart, are you ready for that?
I am. Thank you very much, Mrs. Miller. Okay. You're up.
Good evening, board. This is the first time I've spoken to you in a public forum. I'm Kurt Thomas. I'm the clerk of the works, the construction project. We've been in construction phase for about 2 months now. Activity has just kind of jumped up here about the last 4 weeks, so there hasn't simply been a lot going on. There has behind the scenes as far as paperwork, pre-construction documents, clearances, schedule values and such. I do have a report that I believe you all have a copy of. I'll kind of skip to item 2, which is basically the on-site construction from custom contractor to site contractor. You're required through your bid documents, basically clearing and grubbing the site. That's probably the majority of what you've seen. A lot of trees being removed, a lot of grubbing, removal of vegetation to get to the earth removed. We also do some site layouts as far as the relocation of the slopes, an extension of the baseball field area and the football field area. And then incorporating erosion and sedimentation control. That's your ENS, that's your EPA, that's your Westmoreland water circulatory requirements. And then just ongoing construction preparation of the relocation of the utility line that runs behind the 2 fields that connects over by Palmer's estate. That's kind of the main stuff that's been going on the last 4 weeks or so. All the other contractors haven't mobilized yet. They're just doing their construction stuff as well. With that, I'll jump to kind of items 7 and 8 kind of go together. These are your potential change orders and change orders. I'll keep a running tally of these each month to keep you aware of possible changes and changes that may have occurred to the bid documents. At this time, nothing's been changed. There's been a few things that were brought to the attention of the design team and to the district, being a synthetic turf, which we've talked about in previous board meetings. And then there's some coordination issues with the West Penn utility line. Nothing set in stone as yet. We'll go to the design team to review and coordinate with the contractor see if that goes anywhere.
Right. With the utility line, we have a meeting set up tomorrow morning with the representative from the power company and the contractor and Kurt and myself to just go over what the contractor owns in the construction documents and what the utility company is requiring, making sure that they drive and making sure that everybody knows what they're doing. And from that meeting, there seems like there may be some issues where the utility company may be asking for more than what we originally showed and what we originally talked about. But I'm not sure that that's the case. We'll know better after the meeting. It might just be a lot of just miscommunication.
They're required to coordinate, and the coordination hasn't been very coordinated. Working through that.
The other thing that I just passed out to you while Kurt was talking was we received our third-party review comments for the project. And just to give you a point of reference, a project of this size and this scope a lot of times has 50 comments on it, 100 comments, multiple pages worth of stuff. We ended up with 8 comments, and the first 5 are basically just things that need more explaining. There's really no changes to the documents within this. The last 3 may require some small changes to the documents. Our plan is to have our changes and explanations back to them by the end of this week, and then as soon as we get the final approval, we will incorporate any changes that are required and give those to the contractors. And see if there's any pricing changes. There may be some very minor electrical pricing changes, but from most of this, there's not much that's going to happen from the review comments. Which is a load off my mind, because usually you have that done a while ago. The way the schedule went, the thing about having it done after bid.
And those items that Hank just mentioned will fall under the PR proposal request for the district architect will present to the contractor times that need to be changed, and provide pricing. I don't have much else to share other than construction images on the last page. Each day, I kind of perform a timeline. I take a photo of the exact same spot, showing east and west. So I had a running tally, and I just kind of showed the first day of construction, which was the 4th of December, and then I stopped it on the 2nd of January this year. Kind of shows that timeline of how much has been moved there. Other items are things I covered in the report, just to kind of give you an image of what some of this verbiage means, if you're not familiar with it. If there's anything else you want to see on a monthly basis, let me know. Feel free to add it. Sometimes pay applications, you'd like to know what's out the door, so to speak, what needs to still be determined. Anything else?
I think for the board, I think what you should do is you should have I'm sure we're pretty far along with our schedule now. You have a schedule, right? Yeah. It's all done. So you should probably have on the top somewhere contract duration for an overall project, and then you should start date, complete date, roll out the contract, how many days.
Yeah.
And then you should do that for each of the contractors themselves, each of the primes, so we can keep track of that, so we know where we're at. Okay. That should be, right there, like 401, 402 should be right next to that, so we have that with the overall schedule. And then you should be able to tell us at that time, as we go forward, where we're behind, you don't have to go into detail, but I mean, where we're behind, where we're not, so that we're looking at it. And then on your RFIs, I'm sure you get RFIs and they're going to continue, but it's anything extraordinary that we have to worry about looking at down the road.
There aren't anything.
I don't think there is.
That would fall under the RFIs. The normal RFIs we probably typically would not bring to you. RFIs that could result in potential change orders. Those are the ones that we.
That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm talking about.
And they would fall under that item 7 in their potential change orders.
Okay.
And I'll provide basically the backstory being RFIs to each one of those to the board in the packet.
Yes.
Jim Piper.
And then as far as where the site contractor is, he's pretty much finished the clearing and the grubbing, and he's pretty much close to being finished with the PNS and control implements. So his next thing that he wants to start on, as he's working with the power line relocation, which is important to get out of the way of the cut and fill, he plans on preparing the building pads so that the other contractors can't start to mobilize. So the next step is creating the toe of the slope and the bench, and then start removing the hillside where the two-story building is going, and putting it into the fill so that the general contractor can mobilize. That's all weather permitting.
Kurt, you said we have a schedule values done?
Yes.
For all scopes? They do their duration projections per month for us? What they're going to be building, the approximate values they're going to be building per month?
Per month, they do not. They do it basically by specification section.
Yeah, they should have their divisions broken down in schedule values, G703. They should be able to at least give Dan an estimate. So he's looking at, whether the GC is bidding 100, or it might be building 100 or 200 for January, 120 for the next month. Just have him get it so that he knows what he's kind of dealing with on that scope. You know what I'm talking about? So you can at least forecast how much cash you're going to have. Because when they start to multiply in the 6 or 7 contractors you have here, then you're gonna have to deal with it. At least you get the heads up look.
Yeah.
At a time when you can do that. It's just very simple for me.
Yeah.
doesn't have to be extraordinary. Thanks, guys.
And the property and supply committee meeting minutes are item number 6 in your packet. And next week we will also vote to approve the Eagle Scout contest at Bagley. Colin Bovick is a young man.
Oh, here's your presentation this evening. Greetings, Tom.
Hi.
Well, this is a big step because we won't be doing that. Thank you.
Okay. My project will be a bridge at Bagley to go over Swampy area. It's close to the softball field, so every time that people want to go watch a softball game or take their children to the softball field, you always have to cross the swamp or go around this whole big area just to get to the softball field. So when we were thinking about this, my sister plays softball, so every time we would have to cross the swamp. And when it got muddy, everyone knew to wear like old clothes so we didn't have to get them dirty and everything. So the bridge will kind of serve a double purpose because when we were first building it, we thought about using it for softball. Then when we got there, we found out that we could use it for like the slides too. So when the children play outside, that they'll be able to use it so they can cross the swamp to get to the slides. The footers will be 3 feet on it, and it will be made out of treated wood, so it will last a long time. The rails will be synthetic wood, so you won't get splinters in your hands.
Thank you. Do you have packets they can have?
Yes.
Can I do that for you?
We walked many years through that swamp.
What?
We walked through many years through that swamp. Many. Good job. Now my kids are gone. You're a little late.
Just so everyone's aware, Tom did a formal presentation to the Property and Supply Committee about his projects and had a PowerPoint and other things to explain the project to the committee. And they asked him to be here this evening because he believed that the project should be approved by the board as he moves forward. But I indicated similar to what all of you just said, that I've heard lots of things about the swampy ground and Bagley, so we knew that it would be a very popular project. So I don't know if anyone has any questions for Tom.
Could you talk to us about how you're raising money to pay for this?
We'll ask people we know if they want to donate. We got these estimates from Lowe's, so we'll ask if they have any donations there that they do. And that's really the main ways that we're looking to get the money from the government.
The idea of the synthetic rails is very good. That was a question that Mrs. Kozar asked at the Property and Supply meeting, and for little kids, splinters are very important, so we thank you for doing that. Are there any other questions? It was easier to see on the PowerPoint presentation, but it's really well thought out project and something that is very valuable to Bagley School and everybody who visits it for field and to get to the playground there.
I'm impressed. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you. And that will be on our agenda next week for voting. Okay, thank you. And moving to the finance section of the report, I'm just gonna sort of turn that over to Mr. Watson and let him run through.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Elder. Next week, we'll have approval of the treasurer's report, payment of bills, as well as budgetary transfers. Just as an FYI, the IRS mileage rate increased January 1st, 2013, from 0.555 cents per mile to 0.565 cents per mile. So that'll begin to be implemented with any mileage reports starting with the month of January. The Finance Committee meeting minutes are attached for the review. We have tonight with us Matt Horner and Barb Tarrant from Horner, Weigel and Tarrant. They are our local auditors. We operate on a fiscal year July 1 through June 30th. So they just finished auditing June 30th, 2012. They filed all the paperwork's been filed with the Commonwealth Department of Education, and these booklets are available for public inspection. You should have received a copy of the audit report. I've invited the two to come and speak and maybe just highlight anything they noticed throughout the audit or to answer any of your questions if you have any. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. If you have your audit reports in front of you, on page 3 is our independent auditor's report, and that outlines your responsibility versus our responsibility under the audit. And it also says that in our opinion, that your financial statements are fairly stated. So we did, this is a clean opinion, it's an unqualified opinion, so that's clean. And then, once again, if you go back to page 64, this is the schedule findings and question costs, and it outlines, on this page, it would tell you whether you had any significant deficiencies in internal control, whether you had any material weaknesses. And at both the financial statement level and the schedule of federal awards level, we reported no findings. So we had a very clean report. We didn't have any material journal entries. Any of the journal entries that Dan might have detected as we were going through the audit, we agreed on those and posted those, and so it was a nice, clean process.
So are there any questions? I know you're all going to read this very thoroughly tonight, so if you have any questions later, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I can always follow up. Thank you.
You're welcome for coming.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the E-rate internet. E-rate for internet access and cell phones. We file a 470 application every year for different telecommunications that we have. This year, internet access, their 3-year agreement was up, and we do cell phones annually. You'll see that the recommendation for the internet access, once again, is the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit at a cost of $15,000 per year. Also included in the packet, the second page of that attachment shows that we received 6 proposals for that service, and the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, once again, was the lowest, so we would recommend them. As far as the cell phone goes, we received 3 proposals in Sprint. The Sprint cell phones, the monthly charge for those cell phones that we have within the district is the lowest, so we were recommending to award a month-to-month contract with Wireless Works, which is a Sprint Nextel dealer at $22.51 per month for those cell phones. So we asked them to approve those at next month's meeting. I'm sorry, at next week's meeting. Also included in the agenda is to accept the Community Foundation grant of $2,500 from the Education Fund of the Community Foundation of Westmoreland County. It is in support of the sensory environments for children with autism, and in 2012 Park Gala. So again, once again, we're receiving money, which is a great thing. H is a designation of depositories. We normally do this once a year at the beginning of the school year. I've been talking to various individuals about different investment opportunities that we can take advantage of. As you're all aware, probably in your own personal lives, the return on investment right now is extremely low, and we're trying to see if there's a way to get maybe a higher interest rate. I've been in touch with this Slovak Savings Bank, and they have a higher rate than what we're currently getting. So I'd ask that you would add them as a depository. They meet all of the school code guidelines for all of the investment criteria. They're FDIC insured. Anything over $250,000 is fully collateralized. They'll provide you with an Act 72 letter, et cetera. So it's not like there's any risk of any loss of funds. It's just a banking institution that has a higher rate of return that we currently don't bank with. So once I receive that approval, I'll get the signature cards, and we'll have everything here for Mrs. Maines to execute. Item I is to approve a tax collector compensation. We need to do this once every 4 years. We were prior to the tax collector elections, where the school board is required to set the compensation level for our tax collectors. Historically, we've only done that for Unity Township and Youngstown Borough because the city of Latrobe didn't have an elected officer; they had a department. Because of the Act 32 and having to go to a countywide earned income tax collector, it's sort of, that we switched to Burkheimer. So I sat down with the city of Latrobe and we talked about how to structure it moving forward, and the city manager agreed they wanted to structure exactly how we do Unity in Youngstown, so that's why it's included on this report and why you hadn't seen it historically. The state average for compensation for real estate tax collections is around 0.25, 0.35% of collections. These proposals keep us within that range. I've also did an analysis of all the other districts in Westmoreland County, and we were right where we need to be. So these compensations, I believe, are fair. So those are the proposed rates for the 4 years, 2014-15 through 2017-18. Also included on there, in that the first page is for real estate tax collections. The second page is for per capita. It excludes the earned income because I said under Act 72 now that's a county-wide tax collector. But for per capita and local services tax, it will stay exactly as it has been, which is 2.75% of collections for current and 3.5% for delinquent. Once again, those are within the state averages as well as the county averages. So those are I believe. Are there any questions about that? Okay. And then item J is the preliminary budget, and I do have a presentation for you tonight.
And we will be, look at item K, we will be voting on the resolution next week. And we want you to have this information before our vote. And we did talk about, since we have 3 members absent, whether to do this presentation. But I think that for the other 2/3 of the board, we need to hear this, and you need this information before you vote on the resolution next week. So that's why I decided to go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Elder. And also, I'm going to put this presentation, we'll post it to the district website. So if anybody, who isn't here tonight, they will have access, speaking specifically about board members too. They'll have access to review it prior to the vote next week. So while that looks like it's warming up. Okay, there we go. Okay, what I wanted to do tonight is, before we started talking about what the numbers look like for next year, I wanted to touch briefly about Act 1 and its impact on our school district and all school districts, and what we've done over the past several years to continue to operate within those Act 1 guidelines. So the first slide, just a real quick overview, because I know we've talked about this in detail, but it's a very important piece, and it's worth revisiting. Under Act 1, the state sets an index every year that school boards are required to operate within. That index is driven by the statewide average weekly wage and the employee cost index. So basically what that means is that as the economy goes, the economy drives the index. The better the economy is, the greater the index, the more flexibility you have at the local level. The worse the economy is, the smaller the index, it sort of restricts your control at the local level. The 2013-14 index is the exact same as it was last year, which is 2.2%. Now that is, I'll talk about on the next slide, you have a base index and you have an adjusted. That's the grand total. Those are the two combined. The base and total is 2.2%. What that means is that the school district can increase the millage rate to the cap of 1.67 mils, which generates $556,000 additional dollars in revenue, okay? So you cannot go above the 1.67 mils unless you apply for exceptions or you put it on the voter referendum and ask the public sort of to approve going above that. So as Mrs. already mentioned, next week you'll see on the agenda is a question to approve a resolution. If you adopt, you must adopt that resolution by January 31st. If you adopt the resolution, you're not eligible for exceptions, you can't go to a voter referendum, and you do not need to adopt a preliminary budget. So, if we adopt the resolution, we are saying we are going to operate within the index, which means we cannot go above the 1.67 mils, okay? If for some reason we don't go that direction, we would be required to adopt a preliminary budget by February 20th, which means we would be eligible for exceptions, and we could do a voter referendum if we wish to do that. Boy, that's small. I thought that'd be a little bigger up on that screen. But I just wanted to give you a quick review of what the history is. So as I mentioned, as the economy goes, it sort of drives your index level. I apologize that it's going right to left as opposed to left to right. But if you look in 2008-9, the base index was 4.4%. The adjusted index was 5.5%. You get an adjusted, your index gets adjusted if your market value personal income aid ratio is greater than 0.5. Ours is slightly greater than 0.5. That's why we're eligible for an adjustment, and that's why it goes from 4.4 to 5.5 in 08-09. So what that meant, back in 08-09, the board had the ability to increase the millage rate by 3.8 mils, which would generate $1.2 million in additional revenue. I'm not going to go through each of those, but if you slide to the left, you'll see obviously, we've had some issues with our economy. The index has come down to 1.7. The adjusted index is at only 2.2, which makes the cap to 1.67, which means that your flexibility or your window that you have to operate within is about 556,000. That's a significant difference, obviously, from 08-09 to 2013-14. But it's an important lead-in to show what we've done over the previous years and how we've been able to operate within that for the most part. As I mentioned, there are exceptions. Historically, there were 10 exceptions. The first 3 listed there, you had to file for the exception with the Court of Common Pleas. The following 7, you filed those exceptions with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Those have been many of those have been eliminated. There are now only 3 exceptions: school construction, which we are not eligible for, special education, and retirement contributions. I went online, completed the applications. If the school board chose to do the preliminary budget adoption and to file exceptions, the special education would generate an additional $40,000, which is not too significant. The retirement contributions would generate about another $300,000. So in the back of your mind, instead of, if you were to apply for exceptions and you were to receive those, instead of it being 1.67, the max you could go is 2.67. So there's not like there's a huge availability of funds by applying for receiving those exceptions, okay? Okay, so as I mentioned, just to do a quick operational review, and in the school board members' packets, there are several attachments. Attachment A sort of provided some additional information about Act 1, but I spoke through most of that, so you don't necessarily need to reference that right now. But Attachment B, I just think it's important if you would take a look at that for a moment, because there are a lot of, I believe, interesting things that we've done over the past 2, 3, 4 years that have allowed us to operate within the index. Not just operate within the index, but if you recall, in the 2011-12 school year, our state and federal funding was reduced significantly by close to $2 million, which was about between a 10 and 12% reduction to our funding level. So we had to. It led to a lot of discussion, and these are sort of the results. But if you look at the first bullet point, finance department, we were able to reduce our operating expenditures by over $250,000 per year. Plus, we added some additional revenue through higher interest rates. And I just want to note, everything that you see up here aren't one-time savings. These are annual recurring savings. So if we saved $250,000 last year, we're going to have a reduction in our operating costs of $250,000 next year, and the following year, and the following year. So these are some of these things are very impactful. I just want to note what makes up that $250,000. We went through electricity procurement, natural gas procurement, both of which reduced our costs for those utilities significantly. We did a life insurance review, so we were able to reduce our premiums for life insurance. Same thing with dental and vision, workman's comp. We went out and we hunted and created a competitive environment for workman's comp, which significantly brought down those premiums. Banking services. We did an RFP for banking services that eliminated any fees that we had previously been paying for banking, as well as generates additional revenue through the interest rates. Copier service RFP, postage machine RFP, tax collector services RFP through Act 32. We did the countywide RFP, and locally, just recently through the discussions we've had with the city of Latrobe and revisiting how we compensated them for their tax collections. Telecommunications review, we're going to be approving that next week, those 2 E-rate ones. And then where we participate in multiple joint purchasing consortiums for paper, fuel, et cetera. So we're always trying to get the biggest bang for our buck. Technology department. We're now working with a company called CCL, which has allowed us to reduce some of our labor costs that we previously had for the services that are provided by our technology staff. You're looking at reducing operating expenditures by over $650,000 per year. That's pretty significant. We've done the server virtualization, the desktop virtualization, some other things that have cost money up front, but they've helped us to develop a BYOD environment. We've sort of revisited how we approach the one-to-one laptop initiative at the senior high school. So, those are some things that we've done within technology that has led to those savings. Special education, reduced operating expenditures by over $50,000 per year, plus added over $100,000 in additional revenue through new tuition. We took over programs. We've taken over an autistic program. We've taken over a life skills program. The first thing we look at when we take over those programs is there going to be a savings, an operating savings. We've got to reduce those costs. And yes, we were able to reduce those costs. Significantly, well, you might say $50,000 per year isn't too significant, but you got to look at the other side of it. Now that we have these environments created, we are getting students from other schools that are coming and enrolling in those classrooms. We're billing them tuition, so it's generating additional revenue. So I mean, it was a very good decision. I believe probably the educators would say both for our students from a learning standpoint, but also fiscally. I mean, it can make sense. Transportation department reduced operating expenditures by over $150,000 per year, plus added some additional money through revenue. We've been utilizing a transportation software package that hadn't been used before. Because of efficiencies that we're now taking advantage of, it's generating a larger reimbursement from the state through subsidy. We just went through an RFP for transportation supply. I mean, that's that worked out. I believe there will be some bumps in the road through a transition, but from a dollar and cents standpoint, those are things you have to look at in this type of an environment, and I believe we're doing all of that. Staff services department. We've reduced costs by over $1 million per year. We did an administrative realignment. We eliminated administrative positions. We did a faculty realignment. We eliminated 10 faculty positions. Support staff realignment. We eliminated support staff positions, and we also reevaluated the benefits that we offer our employees. And we got increased contributions as well as limited some benefit options for some of our employees. Sorry, that one didn't mean to bump ahead like that. Maintenance department, we did a custodial realignment that has led to $40,000 per year savings. We've done a program review dealing with driver's education. We're still providing the driver's education opportunity to our students. It's just being done differently. Athletics and food service, we've done some things with combining 9th grade sports with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders that have reduced some costs. And our food service department, we used to transfer $25,000 a year to towards its operations. Now, we've asked them to operate, more efficiently, review and be 100% self-sustaining, and they are. So a lot of credit goes to both of those departments. Revenue fees, we've increased our revenue by over $90,000 per year through various ways. Again, driver's education, parking, some laptop fees, etc. So those are some of the things that we've done over the past several years, which will you'll see in some charts when you see a huge dip. If you ask how did that occur, those are some of the things that we were able to accomplish, or the initiatives that we took on that allowed us to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to get to the budget part. I always like to start off the preliminary budget by stating there always are budgetary unknowns when you're putting a budget together. in November, December, and presenting in January. We have not received any notification from the state or federal governments about what the funding levels are going to be. So right now I'm assuming level funding for both areas. Hopefully that we get additional funds. Healthcare, projecting 10% increase because that's what Highmark has been trending at over the last 10, 15 years. We hope that it's not 10%. We hope that it's less than that. I will tell you, every 1% equals $40,000 reduction. So if it's 9%, you know, we're able to reduce that budget line item by 40% or $40,000. If it goes to 8%, that's $80,000. Special education, we used our current ADMs. Okay, so you know, special education, you know, 1 or 2 students that move in that may be a higher need, it could blow that budget line up. But it could also go the other way. We could have a couple students that, you know, elected to a different route and could reduce costs there. Retirement, we've assumed no retirements currently. This is last year, the early retirement incentive. We believe some individuals take advantage of that. Anytime an individual retires, even if you replace them, there's a reduction to that operating cost. You're replacing a more experienced teacher with an entry-level teacher so that they make a little bit less. And if there are any positions that we're able to not replace, and I'm not saying that there are any, I'm just stating that then you get the full reduction. Student enrollment, we're assuming our student enrollment is flat. Historically, over the last several years, it has been relatively flat, so that's probably a safe assumption. Okay, summary of projected revenue changes. Local, projected to go up by about $44,000. What's not shown here, it's shown in the attachment, I believe C, is that there's a silver lining. Our assessed value for our properties within our community from 2011 to 2012 went up by $2 million. That's good. That generates, you know, $150,000 or more in additional real estate revenue just naturally, okay, without any adjustment to the taxes. So that shows that there is some development, there are, you know, homes being built, et cetera. There's showing growth. So we're hopefully beginning to turn the corner. The downside of that, our local services taxes or collections have gone down slightly. Some of our delinquent tax collections for earned income, delinquent tax collections for real estate haven't been quite what they've been historically, so I needed to adjust those down. Again, your preliminary budget is conservative, I'll admit that. So, you know, I might adjust those line items over the next several months as I continue to learn more. So those sort of adjustments offset the growth that we potentially are seeing in our real estate tax collections. State, projecting it to go up by $568,000. I realize on the previous slide I said level funding. For the most part, it is level funding, except for retirement. The state law requires the state to reimburse us 50% of our costs, okay? So we'll talk a little bit later, but the retirement rate is going from 12.36% up to 16.93% increase next year. So there's a huge jump. Well, we'll get 50% reimbursement from the state, so I built that into the calculation. It's important to note, though, any increase we receive in retirement must be used towards retirement. So you can't take any of that money and put it towards education, put it towards, you know, the classroom development, you know, instruction and learning. It goes specifically to retirement. So I've noted there, this is an increase in state funding. However, the entire amount must be used to offset fees. Federal, there's a slight adjustment of $2,800. My access budget line, I adjusted it back slightly. And then other, that deals with the lease. As our laptop leases decline, we also, our revenue budgeted line item is adjusted slightly too. So the total change, we're looking at about $543,000 in additional revenue at this point in time. Again, once again, I'd like to reiterate, this is a conservative projection. So if you look at, what I thought would be important to sort of focus in on here is, let's do a quick review of our state and federal funding over the past 4 years, plus projected into 2013-14. And I did it 2 ways, because I wanted to show that other than the money that we receive from the state, which they are required by law to reimburse us the 50%, we are level funded at both the state and federal government. We have been. So when you talk about the basic ed subsidy that you receive from the state, that basic ed subsidy truly goes to instruction and learning, etc. We're not generating an additional dollar from that through the state or the federal government. So if you look at 2008-9, you'll see that we were getting about $18 million, including the retirement reimbursement. Without the retirement reimbursement, we were about 17.5 million. Now, 9, 10, and 10, 11 are a little bit misleading because we received some of that stimulus money, if you remember. The stimulus money that we received two types. One, we received $1 amount from the federal government that was to be used for one-time only expenditures. The state also received some stimulus money, which they used to put into the basic ed subsidy line, okay, which we ended up under Governor Rendell. The intent was to not remove that. It was to continue to grow that over the future years. When we switched governors from Rendell to Corbett, that got completely eliminated and got actually sent a different direction away from education. But if you look at it, you'll see it goes up in 9, 10, in 10, 11, and then the steep drop off in 2011, 12. That's the year when we lost close to $2 million in state funding, okay? That's significant. Basically what they did is they took the basic ed subsidy allocation and they rolled it back to the 2008-9 year. Now you look at it, you'll say 8-9, well 8-9 is still higher if you look at the orange than the 2011-12. Well, in 8-9 we were also getting more accountability block grant money, and if you remember that was intended to be used to go from half day to full day kindergarten. Well, over the years that's been reduced significantly also. So our basic ed subsidy funding level in 11-12 was the same as it was in 8-9, and we lost accountability block grant money. And it's been level funded ever since. Now you'll hear from the state, and it's, you know, hey, school districts are getting additional money. Yes, the additional money goes straight towards retirement. Okay, so it's somewhat accurate in their statement. We're getting additional money from the state because they're required to reimburse us for 50% of our cost increases. But it's somewhat inaccurate because it has to go straight towards the retirement program. We are not allowed to use that money, and we cannot use that money for instruction. So, and then I think I mentioned previously, that reduction from 10, 11, 11, 12, it was well over 10% cut in funding. So that's sort of, that along with Act 1 is what led to all those previous slides where I was reviewing the operational review to try and explain how we were able to continue to operate as a school district, and I believe continue to be, you know, run well as a school district. This is just another way to show it as a line graph. Judy liked it, so I figured we'd put it in there for her. But it's basically showing the same type of numbers, and you can see that the black is our funding level, including PSSA, and the orange is when you remove that PSSA funding piece. Okay, so that's the revenue side. Summary of projected expenditure changes. We're projecting at this time our expenses to go up by $1.9 million. Okay, but it's extremely important to note of that retirement or the PSSA accounts for $1,118,000. Okay, so it accounts for the majority of that. The remaining 800 or some thousand is all the other budget areas that we have within our districts, and mainly it's salary and benefits and increases. So under the retirement, you'll see, as it says, as noted on previous slides, the state reimburses the district 50% as per state law. Therefore, the net increase to the district for the PSSA is $549,000. I didn't want you to misrepresent this. Our expenditure budget line item is going up by $1.1 million. But we anticipate, and we know we're going to get an additional $500,000 or more from the state in revenue, so the net difference is the $549,000. Okay. So to keep the same train of thought here, PSSA's impact. Let's look at how we've been impacted over the years. There's also a report in your packet, I believe it's attachment D, that provides a lot more information than this, but just to summarize real quick. 2005-6, the employer contribution rate was 4.69%. I didn't want to go back too far because my charts were getting too big, but it was as low as 1.69% at one time, okay? But if you look at it 05-06, it was 4.69%. So the employer net cost was $557,000. As I mentioned, this year it's 12.36%. Next year it's projected to go to 16.93%. So next year, our net employer cost is about $1.8 million or $1.9 million. It's projected to hit a high in 2022, 2023 of 30.93%. So our net employer cost in that year will almost be $4.5 million. That's an 800% increase from 05-06 to 2022-23. The other interesting thing to note is that it's projected to stay at that 31% until 2035. So it's not like it's going to spike and then we're going to see some relief. So I know that everybody has read articles in the paper, that there are a lot of discussions about this impact and what can they do at the state level, and more to come, because no decisions have been made yet. So this is how the Greater Latrobe School District will be impacted. So if we look at just our expenditures and our expense operating costs, 2009-10 through 2013-14. Okay, in the 2009-10 school year, including PSSA, our budget was a little over $48 million. Without PSSA, it was a little over $47 million. Okay, you can see 10-11 was roughly the same. And then we had this significant drop off again in 11-12. We had the loss of state and federal funding, so we made a lot of adjustments. Now you can see how that climb, it's going to climb this year and what's projected to climb for next year. So the majority of our increases, as we all know, is dealing with PSSA and the retirement system. The other increases that we have within our operating budget, we believe to be manageable, and we believe that we can, continue to work within and work with. But PSSA is growing by leaps and bounds. So just to highlight, if you go from 11-12 to 12-13 to 13-14, from 11-12 to 12-13 and 12-13 to 12-13-14, that's about a little over a 4% increase in our operating costs. Now, if you remove PSSA from that, it's about a 1.8% increase. Okay, it's that number seems a lot more reasonable than continued growth in your expenses of 4% per year. Okay. Are there any questions so far? Okay. No, I'm running through this pretty quickly. And then again, this is another way of showing the same information. So, couldn't decide whether to start with this slide or to sort of end with this slide, but just so everybody's aware, PSSA stands for the Public School Employees Retirement System. Okay? PSSA's funding method is a state law. It's not a local decision. It's not dictated by anybody in this room or anybody within our community. It is a state law. The system became law July 18, 1917, and it was effective January 1, 1919. I listed a couple other dates up there just because it's significant dates. In 1983, they made a decision to increase the employee contribution rate from 5.25% to 6.25%. That was a good thing. They were looking long term and thinking, how are they going to continue to fund the retirement system? And real quick before I say that, PSSA is funded by three areas. You've got your employee contribution, which is fixed, your employer contribution, which we all know is fluctuating, and then return on investment. Well, the return on investment, actually, we just had a good year, but over the last couple of years, it hasn't been real positive. Okay, so that's why the PSSA is being impacted the way it is. But very, very important. 2001, they introduced a new TE class was introduced, and what that did is it increased the multiplier from 2% to 2.5%. That 2.5%, basically what it means is that the retirement that's paid out once an individual retires is greater than 2%. So that had a significant impact on the long-term actuarial costs of the retirement system. In 2011, though, they began to address the issue. Now anybody hired after July 1, 2011 comes in under new guidelines and new requirements. Their employees are now contributing more towards the retirement, so that's going to help to deal with the issue. But as you're all aware, there's still a lot of discussion going on continued discussion about how to fix the issue. I put the website up there that anybody is welcome to go to read more about it. They have a lot of good information on it. But I just wanted to reiterate, PSSA, there's no local control. It's not subject to collective bargaining. You can't do anything different at the negotiating table to offset those costs. The state government dictates it. PSSA's contribution and benefit levels are not local school board, are not decided by local school boards. So, the recommendation, we're still recommending to adopt a resolution to operate within the index. We believe that we can do that. We know that PSSA has a significant impact for us next year and in future years. But we have the next several months to continue to reevaluate all of our operating expenditures and come back within that index. So that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions? Judy, anything I left out that you'd like me to talk about?
I think you hit on everything. I think the recommendation, just so everyone is clear, is that we work within the index of the 1.67
moved to apply for exceptions. Just wanted to make clear that Dan referenced that he did the worksheet to just figure out what it would be if the board would have that desire to move above the index, but it is not the recommendation that we do that. It is the recommendation that we adopt a resolution to work within that index, which is set by the state.
And it just to, you know, I just have a couple notes here. You know, if you're wondering, well, how do you get from A to Z? Like, how do you do that? As I just wanted to reiterate, you know, we didn't assume any retirements. We believe we'll get some retirements. So that was one area. Healthcare, I don't anticipate that being a 10% increase. So that was somewhat conservative number. So we believe we'll be able to reduce that area. You know, we'll continue to work through technology and have discussions about transportation. I'm not saying there's any wiggle room there. We'll continue to talk through those two areas. Plan operations with Mr. Millslate too. So we have some things we're eyeing. Okay, that's all I have.
There will be a meeting tomorrow morning at 9:30 regarding formulating a policy for using advertising within the district. Please remember the last item on the slides that we just saw about the budget, looking at ways to increase revenue within the district, no matter how small they may be. We'll consider everything. And we may even be changing our minds about some of those things, because I've been fighting advertising for a long time, but we'll see. And revision to board policy number 610. There's a copy in your packet, and you'll notice that the only changes are changes in numbers or bids, and basically that's because the state law has changed. Those changes only correspond to the changes in the state law. And we'll have that on the agenda for first reading next week and for final reading in February. And once again, urge you to, if you have strong feeling one way or the other, if you can't come at 9:30 in the morning, we understand that. But if you call in, Connie will take your message. We'll take that into consideration, and we'll be looking at other policies that have already been formulated for other districts and at the reasons why we're thinking of doing this here. And I don't have anything to say about PSBA board liaison, except look around the tables, and that's PSBA's recognition of board members, which is done every January. And are you going to say something about that later? Okay. Okay. Dr. Math-A also isn't here, but there is a transportation committee meeting Wednesday, January 30th in the senior high conference room.
two resolutions this evening under personnel. Letter A, which is resolution number 141, is resignations of 3 people, but I want to take a moment to recognize the one resignation of Dr. Brino as the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. When I came to the district 4.5 years ago, Dr. Brino was the principal at Bagley Elementary School, but was very quick to tell me of his experiences in Greater Latrobe, having been a student here in Greater Latrobe, having been a teacher here at the junior high school, having been an assistant principal at the senior high school, and ending up as the principal at Bagley. I quickly learned that there was a historian in the district that wasn't that old, but certainly was a historian by his experiences here, and that was Dr. Brino. But in addition to recognizing the historian that he is regarding the district, it was very, very clear as well that he has, or has, I can't say past tense, even though soon I guess I will, has had an educational excellence and a drive to pursue educational excellence that was far beyond probably what I've experienced in the past. Having recognized that, the board was very willing to create the Director of Elementary Curriculum, which we had for a year, and then with the position of Assistant Superintendent open, Dr. Brino assumed that position and has been in that position for 2 years. I am now regretting those decisions because I think the experience that he has had here has obviously led him to accept the position as superintendent at Franklin Regional School District. I know that they are getting a wonderful administrator, but in addition to that, a person that has high ethics and one that really always makes decisions in the best interest of students. And as an educator, and those of you who are out there, and obviously the board members know, that I believe that that is the highest honor that an educator can ever get. And that is knowing that the decisions you make are best for the best interest of students. So it is with regret that I ask the board to move on resolution number 141, which is the resignations noted. We're not going to do it. Nobody wants to make the motion. I will make the motion. I'll second. Is there a second? Dr. Laughlin seconds it. Are there any comments from board members?
Thank you for your great work, too. I think James been here, he's done some great things, and I hope he goes on and does more great things. I thought it'd be a stinking benefit from a guy like that.
I completely agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor to work in the district over the years. I'm not going to say too much now because we still have 4 months of work to do.
You have to get everything out of him until he leaves on April 20th.
Ringers. Eric says we're going to wring you dry.
Literally. And we're voting, it's a roll call vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mrs. Cozart?
With great regret, yes.
Dr. Laughlin? Yes. Mr. Music?
Yes, with regret.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
And Mrs. Elder?
Yes. The motion passes. Next week, I will ask the board to move on 2 resolutions, one for substitute teachers that Dr. Tepper has been diligently interviewing, as well as some recommendations for support personnel. But I would ask that the board move on another resolution this evening, and that is to hire Kenneth Meyer as our HVAC maintenance employee. We had our previous employee resign in December, and this is a position that the district is in need of, so we'd ask that you move on resolution number 142 this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Cozart, seconded by Mr. Palmer. Is there any discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Cozart?
Yes.
Dr. Laughlin? Yes. Mr. Music?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mrs. Elder?
Yes. And last, under other
business. Next week, we will ask the board to reappoint Donald McGuire to the school authority for a 5-year term ending on December 31st, 2017. The school board meetings for the second meeting in January as well as the meetings in February are listed, and the Breakfast of Champions is Thursday, January 17th at the high school. I'd also like to take a moment. You have the small gifts in front of you, which is a mayor plant, and we're going to take bets on who kills theirs first. Okay. And a little token that I'll brace you. And a little token that references the Greater Latrobe School District. But obviously, those kinds of things are mayor tokens to recognize the amount of time and service the school board members give totally uncompensated to the district. And I will personally say that the members of our school board, in addition to saying that Dr. Carino always makes decisions in the best interest of students, I honestly say, and I say this to people in the public all the time, that every school board member that sits on Greater Latrobe School District School Board really makes decisions in what is in the best interest of students. And that is not always easy. It's very difficult, especially in the times that we have economically. But moving forward and understanding what is in the best interest of students is really what the purpose of the 9 members who sit on this board, what their function is. And all of you do it very, very well. And the small tokens are simply to say thank you, and that's to say thank you from the entire community and the student body. So this is School Board Recognition Month. I'm not sure why it's January in the depths of the winter, but hopefully you keep that planned at least until spring. So thank you very much for your service to the students at Greater Latrobe. Thank you. And you're very welcome.
Is there any other business to come before the board tonight? Okay, remember tomorrow morning, if you have anything to say about advertising, let us know. The meeting is adjourned.